Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Thursday, December 26, 2024, and today's topic will be, probably call it exploring character design. And before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, welcome if you're new. I sketch and post every day, and I use timers to stay focused and build a sketching habit, so feel free to use these videos for that purpose. I'm going to start a 10-minute timer right now, and this will be a continuation of yesterday's video, so I'll link it in the description as usual and kind of go over what happened. So I did more work, obviously, as you can see here. And it kind of turned into a character, as I often do with sketches. I tend to turn them into some kind of story or a character, because that's what's interesting to me. So in yesterday's video, I just kind of randomly found a picture on my Pinterest feed and just sketched it out. As I worked on it some more, it started to become more of a character. Also in yesterday's video, I sketched out like this horse, and then I just kind of took the sketch from reference, although, I mean, I wasn't really trying to make it too much like it, and just kind of, as today's topic is saying, just sort of developed it, and I'll kind of talk about my thought process. So yeah, so basically I worked on this part, and once I got this far, I just kind of, like, I had reference basically like from my own sketch, and so I just kind of did this. From here, again, I just kind of used what I had here rather than going off of like a photo reference. I just used basically this kind of became like a character, and so I just used that to draw like a bigger version. I kind of like that it's open like this, because like I could paint this. If I scan this in, I could paint this up on the computer, or I could render it here. I kind of like the look of that. So this is an example of how to kind of start off like with inspiration from a picture, but add enough, like change it up enough. And then as you start to develop it or explore it, I kind of wanted to call it developing a character design, except that this is kind of probably like a one-off character design. I mean, it could turn into something, but it's not really what I'm working on currently. I mean, there was a few things I wanted to do with this. One is I wanted to see if I could just take like the sketch, because I had mentioned yesterday, like I could use that as reference, and that's what I tend to like. I don't like to keep looking at reference and trying to copy it, because one, you kind of lose the style, and then two, it looks too much like the reference. And then the other thing I wanted to do was just sketch it in pen, not use like a ton of construction lines or anything, just kind of draw it. And since I had the sketch, I was basically replicating. And that was kind of the other thing. I've been asked before, like, how do you take like kind of this is a sketch, but it's not like that rough, because you can see, like in yesterday's video, I was talking about how to sort of make it look more polished. So it's still sketchy, but it's not that rough. It could work as an illustration. But how do you take something like this and do something else with it? And so this is one thing that you could do, is again exploring like the character. So just do like a zoomed in version. I'll sketch some stuff here to kind of go over what I'm talking about. So one thing I'm going to do in this video, one of my objectives, is to sketch kind of a zoomed out version of the girl and the horse. So the first thing for like this area, I want to establish the scale. So I'm going to keep the horse like on the left side and the girl on the right side, and part of that has to do with composition, like the sketchbook page, because if it is kind of a sketchbook page and a mood board and kind of like a collage or a montage or whatever, it's a composition, then like the idea or the question might be, well, how do you know what to put on a page? A lot of it's intuitive, and just by practicing, you'll kind of get an idea, because I tend to use my sketchbook for ideas and help. Like when I'm drawing other stuff, that's kind of what I use it for. example, like this I consider the sketch. I didn't really use construction. I kind of used basically, like, I incorporated the construction, or like the proportions, if you will, into like, so that I could leave it and it wouldn't look messy. Kind of same with this. The proportions are kind of off and stuff, but that's okay, because what happens is sometimes the character comes through in the roughness of it, in the sort of like the little happy accidents. So one thing is I want to establish like the composition, and I see people kind of get tripped up at this part. So you want to fit, or I want to fit, like stuff right here. Like I want like the horse and like the girl to be in this area. And so you could be kind of subtle with it if you're using a pen, or you could use a pencil. And so yeah, I want it to fit somewhere in here. And I know like I want to have some kind of like trees and stuff, and like the grass. So that's what I want, like in this area. Then probably like some kind of face down here, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So now that I have this much, there's just different approaches. You could start with like the horse. You could start with, because remember, like on this one, or if you look at yesterday's video, like I approached these two sketches purposefully, like in a different way. This one was more just setting up like the proportions first. So let's just do that, like with the horse. And I sometimes do that. Again, there's just so many different approaches. Sometimes I just do that because it's easier maybe, or like just kind of what comes to me. So I'm gonna make it fit like this area. Just kind of, again, you could use a pencil. I'm just looking at like, I looked up what is it, like horse and person, like scale, just to see, like, because I'm not sure what the scale is. This is to learn what the proportions are, and the more, obviously, like the more you draw it, the more you're gonna, I'm getting a little bit better at horses, but I don't have it like completely memorized. But after a while, like your own sketches can kind of become like the reference. So a few things. The way I approach, and I'm kind of learning to like sort of approach it, is there's certain things that are like kind of important in the initial sketch. And then afterwards you can kind of, like, let's say for example, I wanted the horse to look different, but like the proportions just should still kind of be there, and then I can make it look more like a design, like a specific look. So the main thing is just to kind of get like the basic proportions down, and then some of the you can incorporate the rest into like the picture. And part of why I do that, like with the pen, is again just to, like, I find that it makes me learn quicker, like from a study. Like it makes me have to think about what I'm doing. And then the other thing is I can incorporate like sort of accidental stuff that like the pen does some of the, or gives me ideas, like the marks, and I think it adds interest to it. So according to this chart here, this diagram, the person's head is around right here roughly, but then obviously it depends on the characters. So that's why proportion is good, to kind of, I guess I can zoom in here. So this will be like the top of the head of the person. And then because I have the design, I don't have to draw like all of the figure. I can just draw the shape of the outfit. Again, I'm gonna like refine it later, but during this part, this is also, so this is a thumbnail, but like it's also helpful if you're drawing from life also. Like that's the other thing. That's what this approach is about. But it's also helpful just in general. Again, I'm not going to be, so it is a thumbnail. I'm not going to be like too crazy, like detailed with it. The idea is to get like get the mood and also get like the reference, like the scale of it, the proportion of it. And then you can always detail it, because part of it is also like the color of the horse. So yeah, the main thing is to get like the silhouette. Alright, so that's not too bad. So we talked about the composition and how we established like the scale. So that was pretty helpful to me. The next thing is I wanted to talk about sort of like trees and stuff. Kind of the same thing, like establish the composition. So I'm looking at a tree, but I'm gonna draw like a tree that fits into my composition. However, I wanted to go over sort of like ways of approaching it, because part of it is how much, like if it's in the background, like you don't necessarily want it to be that detailed. So one thing is kind of get sort of the overall shape going. And this is sort of tips for the background. And then the other thing is to kind of think of like the lighting. So I'll just stick with like the basic lighting here. So if you don't want to outline stuff, you can just go like this. That might be like the best way to start it. And then once you have like kind of this lighting, then it kind of helps with the foreground here. But I wouldn't worry too much about that right now. But that's basically. And then the next thing would be like to throw in some lines that suggest like the branches. And again, because it's in the background, I don't know that I want that much detail. But the next step would be kind of to define the shapes a little bit. But yeah, they're not too difficult. But so that's one way to get this going. So the next thing, make sure we're in the camera. Okay. The thing about like character design is if you're always looking at reference, then it'll never really look like the character. It won't really bring it to life. So I already have reference right here. Like I have like the face. So I'm gonna go off of like basic drawing, which is like drawing the head and the face. But like again, first I want to fit it into like the actual composition. So I'll just kind of indicate where I want it to fit, and that's probably too big. So let's zoom out a little bit. Kind of like right here. And again, that's just based on the sketch page. And I'm keeping it pretty loose because I'm using a pen and I'm gonna want to like blend it in. So just using like basic drawing, I'm going to just draw something right here. But I also want it to look like the characters, so I'm going to keep that in mind. And since I'm using a pen, and this is kind of like a challenge for myself to be more deliberate, I'm going to indicate, so I guess I can talk about like what yeah, like part of it has to do with the anatomy, obviously. And so these are like landmarks. That's the word I was trying to think of. So you could start to like add some, a little bit of expression. Doesn't have to be anything too dramatic. Kind of the proportions, basically. And again, this is just going off of the character. It's not a... And you can use a pencil, of course. And these are all things that can be refined later. Yeah, so I'm just adding lines that I know that I can adjust. But yeah, just wanting to give yourself room to adjust things. But there's always that overwork thing going on, but it's not too bad actually. Part of it is just challenging myself. Now what you can do is, one, of course, detail this a little bit more. But then like obviously redraw it, like once you kind of have like the look. Because part of it is, this is a character, it's not from reference, it's not, I'm not drawing like a photo of an actual person. I'm drawing a character. So what I would do is, part of it is like just the look of the sketch page. So I use like a medium point, and so there's one that's smaller, and then there's one that's like even smaller than that. So for some of the subtle detail, I can start to refine it. Now again, this is what I would do with a pencil, but you'll see that there are kind of benefits for using a pen. I think you get kind of accidental lines that are nice. And usually what I'll do is, once I get a sketch that's pretty okay, which is what I'm working on here, one, I'll come back and kind of do like maybe another 30-minute. I'll set a 30-minute, or I'll just draw and like I'll set a timer. Like right now I'm using a timer to count down, but then sometimes I'll just start, like I'll want to sketch and I will do a timer that like counts up. So if I want to fix some things, I could use like a whiteout pen, like a paint marker to kind of fix, or just like turn it into shading. But then you have to be careful not to overwork it. But we are exploring character design. So that's one way to do it, because yeah, like this isn't drawn from a person, this is a design of a character. So part of why I'm using the smaller pen is to be a little bit more subtle. Again, part of that is just me challenging myself to see if I can do it. And then the next thing would be just to blend it. So I kind of like to do it this way, where like this could be more in the background. And part of why this is sort of bold is because I had to go in and like fix things. But I wanted to keep working on it because, one, to show you sort of like the different stages, because yeah, if you use a pencil, I mean, you might have erased. I mean, that would have been fine. And then, but like for me, one, it's more of a rush, I guess. It's more like exciting to have to think about, okay, well, how do I fix this picture? Like what's, so that I guess that's kind of like in writing, they call that like a pantser kind of thing. Although in writing, I don't really do that. I plot things out. So in some ways, that's what this was. Like I plotted this out, and then now I can just kind of add stuff from reference and it'll look like my drawing. That was the idea. Then I would just kind of add details. Whereas this one, this was sort of, yeah, like seat of my pants, as they say, because I wasn't sure. But then I feel like sometimes doing it this way, you can get more character that you wouldn't necessarily get if you were too careful. And then, yeah, you could just redraw it. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you for joining me for today's sketching routine. And if you like these videos, please support the channel. And until next time, keep on sketching.